When we kick off the game, the first thing that happens is we tell the camera above the battlefield to take a picture and analyze it. We're just waiting for that to finish to give you an idea of how long this process takes. Keep in mind that it isn't optimized yet. For those of you with a stopwatch, it took around 12 seconds for the camera to process the first image. Once that's done, we get our first digital map of the battlefield. Keep in mind, visually, this is a very early build. It is, however, our initial check to make sure everything's running correctly. Ideally, what's on my screen should match what's physically on the tabletop. As I hover over different parts of the battlefield, you can see on the left the termagants, the Gene Stealers on the objective, and behind them, the Broodlord. On the other end, we've got the Captain, another objective, and finally, the Assault Squad. All right, now into the movement phase. The camera as well isn't constantly streaming, so we've got to manually input what kind of movement is happening. Our options are to stay put, do a regular move, or advance. I'm going to go ahead and input that both units did a regular move, and I'll physically move them on the battlefield accordingly. Now, on to the next phase. Since I've moved some units, we got to ping the camera again to take another picture and process it. And yep, you guessed it, it's another 12 seconds of waiting for that process to finish. And guess what? When we glance at the overhead camera image, it shows the exact same setup. Looks like our model detection and distance measuring are functioning. All right, onto the shooting phase now. As the image gets processed, it's doing all the math for us, figuring out distances between models, objectives, and terrain pieces. It's basically setting the stage, letting us know who can see who and if they're within firing range. So I'm gonna have my captain take a shot. He's gonna fire off both of his weapons at the termagants. Now, we move into the roll phase, where we roll the different types of dice in the game. Normally we'd use our automated dice detection, but for this update, we're sticking with a random dice generator. Let's just click through the rolls for now. And there you have it, a summary page pops up, showing that the captain managed to take down 3 termagants. Time to remove them from the battlefield. Now, the camera needs to process the new state of the battlefield again. But let's be real, waiting for that isn't the most thrilling part. So we'll skip over that wait screen from now on. Now we move to the charge phase. The system indicates that our captain can charge both the termagants and the Broodlord, but we're going for the termagants this time. Before we commit, let's double check the range with a tape measure, 10 inches. The system also says that we will need a 10 to make the charge, showing us the accuracy of its measurements. I end up rolling a 12 to make the surprisingly long charge. We move our captain into combat and move on to the combat phase. In combat, my captain has to attack the termagants, since they are the only group in combat. Let's quickly click through the combat rolls. He ends up killing 2, and the termagant's retaliation does 0 damage. Now, my turn ends and Alpha War takes control. As it ponders its moves, we're faced with a brief waiting screen lasting about 7 seconds. Once the AI decides, it presents us with its plan on the digital map, along with instructions on where to move its units. Let's go ahead and follow through with its directions. Since the AI has no shooting phase, we skip straight to the charge phase. It's trying to get its Broodlord into the action by charging our captain. The summary shows it needed a 5 to succeed, but unfortunately, it falls short. With no other charges declared, we head straight into combat. My captain goes first and kills 3 more termagants. The remaining termagants respond and do no damage once again. Alpha War ends his turn. All right, let's do one more quick check-in before we wrap up the rest of the battle. Looking at the digital map, we can see the remaining termagants, Broodlord, and my captain huddled together next to an objective. Meanwhile, the Gene Stealers have made a move for the bottom objective. and my assault intercessor squad is holding the back one. So far, everything seems to be in order. Now, let's fast forward through the rest of the battle, as we've already seen the basic functions of our early stage detection, mapping, and UI systems. As the game progresses, victory leans in favor of the Tyranid force, and they pull off some interesting maneuvers worth discussing. During my turn, I decide to keep my captain stationary to test how the AI will react. Surprisingly, Alpha War doesn't charge my captain as expected, but instead pulls the Broodlord back to secure its home objective, tipping the objective count in their favor. Next turn, when I move my captain onto the objective, Alpha War switches gears, aggressively pushing both Genestealers onto my home objective and sending the Broodlord charging towards my captain. It's a bold move, and it pays off for Alpha War, as my captain falls and my assault squad takes heavy damage. At this point, my options are limited, and Alpha War ultimately wipes my Marines from the board. I'll admit I wasn't playing to win, but rather to showcase the Wargame Simulator system and Alpha War's capabilities, even though it had a slight points advantage. Despite my laid-back approach, Alpha War really took control of the board with its 3 units to my 2, consistently applying pressure on objectives and never losing sight of its primary goal. It was a fascinating and remarkably fast-paced game, showcasing just how strategic and dynamic this system can be. Thank you, and please support our Kickstarter so we can continue development on both Wargame Simulator and Alpha War.